All right, let's dive into something a little different today. We're going deep on pine processionary caterpillars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those fuzzy little guys that you might see, moving in a line.
Yeah.
Turns out they're way more dangerous than they look.
Yeah, you don't often think about caterpillars being dangerous. When
Yeah.
you think about nature's dangers, you think about the big stuff.
Exactly.
But those little creatures, they could really pack a punch.
Yeah, and our source today, it focuses on them in Spain.
Okay.
Which is interesting because when most people think about Spain, you picture the beaches and maybe worry about snakes or scorpions.
Yeah.
But these caterpillars, they're like a hidden danger right in those beautiful pine forests.
It's true. And the danger comes from their life cycle, which is so fascinating how it all ties together with their defenses and their impact on us and animals.
Okay, so let's break down that life cycle.
Yeah.
So they start as eggs, right? Laid high up in pine trees, and then they hatch into larvae or caterpillars, and then they go through these different phases called instars.
Yeah. There's 5 instars.
Five, okay.
And the first 2, they're pretty harmless. They mostly just munch on pine needles.
And that's when they're vulnerable to predators like birds, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the birds are actually helping keep the population down at that early stage.
That's right. Nature's pest control.
Yeah, awesome. But then things change at that third instar.
Yeah.
That's when they develop those urticating hairs, their little weapons, and they start building their nests.
Right.
Okay, wait. They actually build nests. I'm picturing like a bird's nest, but I'm guessing it's a little different.
You're right. It is. It's like a dense web, a silken web, and it can have hundreds of these caterpillars in it,
Wow.
like a cocoon almost. It protects them, keeps them warm.
And are these nests easy to spot? Like if I'm hiking through a pine forest, would I see them?
Yeah, you'd see them, especially later in the year, like December to March,
Okay.
especially on certain pines like black pine or Canary Island pine.
So keep that in mind if you're going for a winter hike in Spain. But what about these processions you always hear about?
Right.
Is that just a name, or do they really march in a line?
Oh, they do. They actually form a line, nose to tail,
Wow.
sometimes for meters.
Okay.
Yeah, they move from their nest to go eat the pine needles.
I'm trying to picture that. I mean, it sounds kind of cool, but also knowing about those barbed hairs, a little freaky too.
Yeah.
Like they're leaving a trail of invisible danger.
It's true. And this is why you need to understand how they behave, because they're not just stuck in their nests.
Right.
They can move around, cover a lot of ground.
Right.
So you're more likely to come across those hairs.
So it's not even enough just to avoid the nests.
Right.
You have to be aware in general. But you mentioned that they come out to feed at night. Why at night?
It's thought that it helps them avoid predators
Okay.
and also that hot midday sun.
Right.
So they cluster together in their nests during the day, to stay warm and digest.
Okay.
And then at night, they come out under the cover of darkness to feed.
Interesting.
It's a really cool adaptation.
Yeah. So we've got these processions, the nocturnal feeding, but we haven't talked about pupation.
Right.
What happens after they've had their fill of pine needles?
Then they come down from the trees,
Okay.
still in that procession,
Uh-huh.
and they burrow into the ground.
Okay.
And that's where they transform into moths to start the cycle all over again.
So the creaky crawlies turn into moths. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's got to be more to it than that.
Well, the interesting thing about their pupation is that it can last for up to 3 years.
Wow.
So the moths that you see this year might not be from last year's caterpillars.
3 years? That's a long time to be underground.
It is, and it makes it really hard to track their populations and, figure out where they're going to be.
Wow. Okay. So we've got this complex life cycle, all these interesting behaviors, and then this layer of danger underneath it all.
Right.
But let's get into those dangers because that's where things get really serious.
Yeah, definitely.
So those urticating hairs you talked about, those are the real problem, right?
Yeah.
Like what makes them so dangerous?
They're these microscopic weapons, barbed and everything,
Uh-huh.
and the caterpillars shed them, to protect themselves.
Yeah.
But what makes them so bad is you can't even see them.
So you could be surrounded by them and not even know it.
Exactly. And they're so tiny, they can just float in the air,
Oh, wow.
get on your clothes, your skin,
Okay.
even in your eyes, or you breathe them in.
That's worse than I thought. So it's not just about avoiding touching the caterpillars themselves.
Right.
It's about being aware of everything around you.
Yeah, and how you react to them is different for everyone.
Okay.
Some people just get a little itchy, like a rash.
Yeah.
But other people, they can have a really bad allergic reaction,
Oh, wow.
like anaphylactic shock,
Seriously. That's scary. I'm starting to see why these caterpillars are considered such a threat.
Yeah.
But what about pets? Like dogs especially. They're so curious.
Right, they are, and they're drawn to these caterpillars,
Yeah.
especially when they're in those processions.
Huh.
They might go sniff them, lick them, or even try to play with them.
Oh, no.
And that's when those hairs become the big problem.
What happens if a dog, like, comes into contact with the hairs?
Those barbs on the hairs, they get stuck, in their mouth, their nose, their tongue.
Oh, God.
It causes so much pain and swelling.
Oh,
In
no.
really bad cases, the tissue can actually die.
You're kidding. So, like, a dog just sniffs at them, and it could have these awful consequences.
It's true, and sometimes the damage to their tongue is so bad that it has to be amputated.
That's awful. I'm definitely keeping my dog far away from pine trees from now on.
Yeah.
But how do you avoid something you can't even see?
It's tough. I mean, the main thing is just to know they're there,
Right,
to recognize the signs, like those nests,
right.
and then you can stay away.
Okay.
And during those times when they're doing those processions, just be extra careful around pines.
So if you're hiking and you see one of those nests, just turn around and go a different way.
Probably the best thing to do, and even if you don't see a nest, just remember the time of year.
Okay.
They're most active later in the year, and those processions usually happen in late winter, early spring.
Okay, so basically December to March, that's like pine processionary caterpillar season.
Pretty much.
Got to be extra vigilant then. Is this just a Spain problem, though, or are these caterpillars in other places, too?
They're all over Southern Europe, North Africa, Near East.
Wow. Okay.
And get this, climate change is actually helping them spread.
Really?
Yeah, those milder winters, it means they can survive in places they couldn't before.
Wow. So as it gets warmer, they can move into new areas. That's not good.
No, it's leading to more and more places having to deal with these caterpillars.
So it's not just a local thing,
Yeah.
it's a global thing that's probably going to get worse.
Right, which is why it's so important for people to know about them, know about the dangers.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just about people and animals either, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's an impact on the environment, too.
Oh, yeah,
What
definitely.
kind of ecological impact are we talking about?
Well, as they spread, they put more and more pressure on these pine forests,
Right.
which are already having a tough time with deforestation and climate change.
Yeah.
The caterpillars eat so many pine needles that it can weaken the trees,
Oh, wow.
and then they're more likely to get diseases and pests.
So it's not just that they're annoying, they're actually hurting the whole forest ecosystem.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, they mess with that delicate balance,
Right.
and that affects the other plants and animals that depend on those forests.
This is turning into a much bigger issue than I realized. I'm really glad we're talking about this. But something has to keep these caterpillars in check, right? Like some kind of natural predator. I mean, there's got to be something, right? Like some predator or something that keeps them from just taking over.
There are, actually, yeah. Wild boar eat them, and
Yeah.
foxes,
Okay.
hedgehogs,
Mm-hmm.
even some birds.
Okay. Although I can't imagine they taste that great with all those spiky hairs.
Yeah, those hairs are definitely a problem.
Why?
Birds, they tend to eat the caterpillars before they get those hairs.
Okay.
So once the caterpillars have their defenses, they're kind of left alone.
So it's like the predators have a limited window of opportunity.
Right, exactly. But humans try to intervene too,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are ways to manage these populations.
Yeah, especially in Spain where there's such a problem.
Yeah, there are a few things they do. One thing is they use these traps
Okay.
that take advantage of, you remember how they come down from the trees to pupate?
Oh, yeah, that procession. Like a spiky rope of danger.
Right, well, these traps go around the tree trunks,
Uh-huh.
and they basically catch the caterpillars as they're coming down.
So they just walk right into them?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty effective way to catch a lot of them at once.
That's smart, like cutting them off at the source. But what about, like, bigger efforts? Do they use pesticides?
They do, but only as a last resort because, you don't want to harm the environment.
Right, of course.
So sometimes in some areas they'll do like an aerial spraying program
Uh-huh.
if the caterpillars are really hurting the forest.
Yeah, I get why they'd be hesitant to use pesticides. You don't want to hurt other plants and animals.
Exactly. It's all about balance, right?
Yeah.
Controlling the caterpillars without messing up the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's definitely more complicated than I realized. This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew a little about these caterpillars, but I had no idea how much of an impact they have on people, on animals, even on the environment.
It's amazing.
Right.
Like you see these tiny little creatures and you don't think much of them,
Right.
but they can really change things.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the big takeaway is just to be aware.
Yeah, awareness is key. Knowing about them could help you avoid a bad experience
Yeah,
or even protect your pets.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right? And in this case, it could even save you a trip to the hospital or the vet.
Exactly. And hey, maybe this deep dive will make people look at nature a little differently.
Yeah.
Pay more attention to those little details.
Like next time you're walking through a pine forest,
Right.
maybe take a closer look, but from a safe distance,
Yeah, exactly.
and just appreciate how complex even these tiny creatures are and how they fit into the bigger picture.
That's what it's all about, seeing those hidden connections.
It definitely makes you realize that there's more to those beautiful landscapes than meets the eye.
Yeah, a lot more.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.